She is silent not because she has nothing to say, but because her voice is not valued. Silence feels like a wall you cannot climb, and yet you keep pressing your hands against it. You ask a question, you wait for an answer, but what comes back is nothing. That nothing is not empty, it is heavy, it vibrates in your chest. The longer it lasts, the louder it becomes inside your head. Every second of silence twists into thoughts. Did I say something wrong? Did she stop loving me? Is she hiding something? Is she punishing me? The mind spins faster than words could ever move, creating whole stories out of the absence of sound. Silence cuts deeper than any argument. A shout at least acknowledges your existence. A cry at least confirms that there are feelings. But silence leaves you suspended in air, unsure if you are even seen. It feels like being erased while still standing in the same room. You search her face for clues, the way her eyes move, the way her breath slows down, the way her shoulders tense. Every tiny movement becomes a secret code you are desperate to crack. The body becomes the only language left, and yet it refuses to tell you what you want to know. The emptiness grows heavier the longer it lasts. Your stomach tightens, your chest becomes a cage. You hear your own heartbeat as if it were a clock ticking louder and louder. Shame crawls in because you catch yourself begging internally for even the smallest word. A part of you whispers that you should be stronger, that you should not care so much, that silence is nothing. But another part feels like a child abandoned in a dark room, desperate for any sign that someone is still there. Resentment builds alongside fear. The mind says, if she cared, she would speak. If she respected me, she would not leave me in this vacuum. Anger rises because silence feels like control, like someone holding all the power in their hands while you are left to drown in uncertainty. And yet beneath the anger, there is another layer, the fear that maybe the silence hides a truth you cannot bear to hear. Silence becomes both torture and protection at the same time. It is not just the absence of words, it is a mirror that reflects your own shadow. The anxiety that fills the gap comes not only from her, but from you. Her silence awakens your hidden fear of being rejected, of not being worthy of a response, of being invisible. It awakens the wound you carry quietly, the wound of needing to be heard, needing to be seen, needing proof that you matter. That is why silence stings more than words ever could. Words you can argue with, defend against, deny. Silence leaves you defenseless, forced to face what lies inside your own chest. The loop tightens. The more she stays quiet, the louder your inner voices become. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You project motives onto her that may not even exist. You feel punished, abandoned, erased. And in that storm, the silence itself becomes a scream. A scream that does not come from her mouth, but from the shadows you have been avoiding in yourself. You tell yourself she is cold, that her silence means indifference, but coldness is easy to spot. And this does not feel simple. If she were truly empty, you would sense absence. Instead, you sense pressure, a weight that fills the room even without sound. Silence is not always distance. Sometimes it is too much closeness, too much intensity held back because words cannot carry it. You tell yourself she is manipulating, that the silence is a trick to make you chase, to bend you to her will. And yes, silence can be used as a weapon, but not every silence is strategy. Sometimes it is the collapse of words under the weight of emotions, too tangled to be spoken. Sometimes it is not a game, but a defense, because saying anything at all feels more dangerous than saying nothing. You tell yourself she feels nothing, that the silence is proof of emptiness. But emptiness does not tremble in the air the way her quiet does. Emptiness does not make you hold your breath, waiting. Emptiness does not make your own chest ache with unanswered questions. What you are facing is not a void but a closed door. And a closed door means there is something behind it. Labels like cold, manipulative, emotionless, offer quick relief because they give you certainty. They let you put the silence into a box, name it, dismiss it. But those labels keep you blind. They explain nothing. They only protect you from the discomfort of not knowing. They are illusions, shields against the raw truth that silence may hold something deeper, something you cannot control. The danger of these illusions is that they make you fight the wrong battle. If you believe she is just indifferent, you push harder for attention. If you believe she is just manipulative, you defend yourself with suspicion. If you believe she is empty, you retreat in despair. In every case, you are trapped reacting to your own story, not to the reality of her silence. And the more you cling to these simple explanations, the more blind you remain to the real forces at work beneath the quiet. Silence is not always a mask for cruelty or coldness. More often, it is a language of the unconscious, a signal that something unspeakable is moving underneath. To reduce it to indifference or manipulation is to miss the point. What feels like nothing is in fact overflowing with meaning. And the moment you see that, the illusions begin to crack. The first reason she stays silent is fear of conflict and rejection. Words can start a fire, and for someone who dreads being abandoned, silence feels safer than risk. She swallows her thoughts not because they are absent, but because she believes speaking them might push you away. The wound of being left alone is older than this moment, and silence becomes her shield against reliving it. The second reason is accumulated shame that cannot find a voice. Shame paralyzes speech. It tells her that whatever she says will be wrong, ridiculous, unworthy. So she says nothing. Not because she doesn't feel, but because she feels too much and believes that if you see it, you will judge her. Silence hides the unbearable exposure of her inner world. The third reason is protest against pressure. When words have no space to breathe, silence becomes the only form of resistance. She may not dare to shout, may not dare to fight openly, but by withdrawing her voice, she declares, "You will not control me." Silence in this case is not absence, but rebellion. It is the only way left to assert boundaries when every other attempt has failed. The fourth reason is the unconscious attempt to punish or protect. Sometimes silence is a weapon. The refusal to answer stings more than an insult. Sometimes it is protection. If I say nothing, I cannot be wounded further. Both emerge from the same root, the psyche seeking balance when it feels cornered. The intention may not be conscious, but the effect is powerful. The fifth reason is exhaustion and emotional burnout. When someone is too drained to fight, too tired to explain, too weary to carry the weight of words, silence becomes the only option left. It is not rejection, it is collapse. A collapse into stillness because energy has been spent and nothing remains to give. Each of these 5 reasons is tied to the shadow. Fear of rejection comes from old wounds of abandonment. Shame rises from parts of the self that were never accepted. Protest emerges when the authentic voice has long been silenced. Punishment or protection grow from repressed anger and unmet needs. Exhaustion signals that the psyche has carried too much pain for too long. Freud called it repetition of the unresolved. Jung called it the shadow manifesting through behavior that the conscious mind cannot explain. Silence is not emptiness. It is the echo of all that could not be said, all that was pushed down, all that was never given space. And when you face her silence, you are not facing nothingness. You are facing a tangle of fears, wounds, and defenses that speak without sound. Silence is not a blank space. It is a form of expression the unconscious chooses when words are too dangerous. Freud noticed how people avoid what frightens them. The psyche invents ways to escape confrontation, and one of the most powerful ways is simply not to speak. Avoidance becomes ritual. Instead of shouting or crying, the mouth closes, but inside the storm continues. The unsaid does not disappear. It presses harder, shaping every gesture, every pause, every glance. Jung described the shadow as everything we cannot admit to ourselves. When that shadow grows heavy, it leaks out through silence. The lips stay still, but the body betrays what is hidden. The eyes turn away, the shoulders tense, the atmosphere thickens. Silence becomes the voice of what has been buried. It is not emptiness, it is the shadow speaking without permission. In silence lies repressed aggression. Anger that cannot be allowed to explode finds safety in withdrawal. Instead of attack, there is absence. Instead of words that could wound, there is the suffocation of withholding them. Yet the aggression is still present. It lingers in the unspoken, in the tightness of the air, in the tension that both sides can feel. This is why silence can sting sharper than an insult. It carries the weight of what was not allowed to erupt. There is also pain hidden in silence. Pain that feels too large, too raw, too difficult to translate into language. Words might diminish it or expose it too harshly, so the psyche locks it away in quiet. But silence never truly hides pain. It radiates. You sense it even without explanation, as if the air itself is heavy with what cannot be named. The paradox is this: silence often communicates more than speech. A single pause can reveal a wound deeper than 1,000 accusations. The absence of sound becomes louder than shouting, because in it the unconscious takes over the conversation. Complexes, those clusters of unresolved feelings, speak through silence. They speak in what is withheld, in what is avoided, in what is frozen. This is why silence must be heard as language. To dismiss it as emptiness is to miss the message. The unconscious does not use grammar. It uses absence. It says, here is what I cannot bring to light. Here is what I cannot yet risk showing. And if you dare to listen, silence tells you exactly what words could not carry. To work with silence, you must first resist the urge to fill it, the impulse to demand words, to push for explanations, to drown the quiet with noise only deepens the distance. Begin instead by learning to stay in the pause. Count your breaths, feel the weight of the stillness. Let the discomfort rise without trying to kill it. The pause is not empty. It is a mirror showing you your own fear of not being answered. The second practice is to notice the fantasies that rush in when she does not speak. Your mind will invent stories. She is angry. She is hiding something. She has stopped caring. Write these stories down. They reveal more about your own shadow than about her. The silence triggers what is already buried in you. By catching these projections, you begin to see how much of your pain comes not from her mouth, but from your imagination. The third practice is to anchor in your body. Silence awakens physical reactions before thoughts take shape. A knot in the stomach, tightness in the throat, heat in the face. Do not push them away. Observe them with attention. Describe them to yourself. My chest is heavy. My hands are trembling. When you stay with the sensation instead of running, it begins to loosen. What the psyche hides in silence, the body always reveals. The fourth practice is inner dialogue with the image of the silent one. Close your eyes and imagine her standing in front of you, saying nothing. Ask her what she cannot say. Ask her what she is protecting, what she fears. Then let your imagination answer in her voice. This is not about guessing her thoughts, but about giving your unconscious a channel to speak. Very often the words that appear surprise you because they come from the parts of yourself you have been avoiding. These tools are not about breaking silence by force. They are about transforming your relationship with it. Instead of an enemy, it becomes a teacher. Instead of emptiness, it becomes a message. And when you share what you discover in a journal with someone you trust, or here in the comments, the silence inside you begins to break as well. If you are ready to stop playing roles, write taking off the masks. Because silence is everywhere, but the choice to face it openly is rare. Those who dare to name it, those who dare to see what it hides, are the ones who begin to live without fear of the quiet. Silence is not the end of conversation. It is another form of speech. When she stops talking, it does not mean there is nothing. It means there is something that cannot yet take shape in words. Silence holds the shadow. It carries what feels too dangerous, too shameful, too raw to expose. You may think you are abandoned, but in truth, you are standing in front of a message that is being spoken in a language you do not yet know how to hear. The great shift happens when you stop hearing silence as refusal and begin hearing it as communication. The pause, the withheld word, the gaze that avoids yours. These are not voids, they are sentences spoken by the unconscious. Freud wrote about avoidance as a defense. Jung about the shadow that finds indirect forms of expression. In silence, both are present. The defense against pain and the revelation of what lies beneath. This is why silence can hurt more than speech. Words can be denied, argued with, reshaped. Silence leaves you with nothing to hold, nothing to fight. It forces you to face your own projections, your own hunger, your own fear. And in that confrontation, you begin to see that the pain is not only about her, it is about the parts of you that tremble when no answer comes, the parts that equate quiet with abandonment, the parts that carry wounds older than this moment. The culmination is not victory over silence, but reconciliation with it. When you begin to hear the unsaid as a kind of language, the pain changes shape. It stops being a dead end and becomes a doorway. What once felt like rejection begins to feel like revelation. You may not like what you hear, but you will no longer be blind. Silence shows you what the shadow is trying to say. And so the ending is not closure but opening. You will still meet silence. You will still feel its weight, but now you know it is not emptiness. It is the psyche speaking in its own way. And when you stand in that space without running, without forcing, without filling the gap, you discover that silence is not the enemy. It is the beginning of a deeper dialogue, and this is only the beginning.